So the goal of this video is to show you guys how I personally de-Google a cell phone. And by de-Googling, what that entails is I remove the stock ROM that comes on this phone and I replace it with an aftermarket ROM. What I'm going to be using is MicroG. It's a LineageOS that has MicroG compiled into it. It works quite well. It allows us to emulate Google, but without having any of the bloat. And if you see like the gaps software that Google installs on the phone, the minimum size is like 100, 150 megabytes. And with MicroG, we can do the same thing with like 10 megabytes of file or with data. So you have to ask yourself, what's in that other 140 megabytes of code, right? And what we need to do in order to get the ball rolling so we can remove that ROM is that we need to do a few things first. So the first thing I did on this phone is I put it into developer mode, okay? And how we get into developer mode, you have to unlock it. You have to tap build so many times. It says I'm already in developer mode, so that's pointless. But I just want to show you guys. And the next thing we do is we go into system. And we're going to go to developer options. And right here, the most critical thing right here is OEM unlocking. Now, when you get one of these phones, it's probably going to be grayed out, okay? And when it's grayed out, it's going to say you need to connect to a network or insert a SIM card to connect to your wireless cellular carrier. However, by connecting to the network, like on your home Wi-Fi, that's not going to remove it grayed out, okay? You're actually going to have to turn it off, put in a SIM card, and then reboot it. It's going to connect up, and then you'll go into this developer options, and it's probably still going to be grayed out. And all you got to do is click this once to gray everything out, and then click it again. And it's going to enable that gray box. It should ungray that. Other things that sometimes when it's grayed out, if you update it to the newest OS version and then basically do what I said, then the OEM unlocking may not be grayed out. Now, if you're dealing with a situation where it's just grayed out regardless, you might have a Verizon phone. Some of the Google phones that were sold to carriers, namely Verizon, were locked, and they're horrible. I actually had a Google Pixel that experienced that issue where it was grayed out and locked. And there's basically everything that I just previously talked about. There's nothing I could do. It ended up that they had something built into their dialer app that when you booted up the phone would basically lock it up. So I went in there using the ADB and I actually uninstalled that application as a user, then rebooted and then connected to the network, and I ended up having access to the OEM unlock. It was not a fun experience. It took several hours to figure that out. And that goes to my next point. Whenever you deal with one of these phones, whether it be Google or Samsung or whoever, when you start getting to the point where you want to root it and you want to, install a new ROM, you're always going to deal with some quirky or nightmarish scenario. I don't think I've done probably like 20 or 30 of these over the years. My kids run de-Googled phones. My wife runs de-Googled phones. I run de-Googled phones. And whenever we upgrade, we all get more phones and we de-Google them. And yeah. So I've done a lot of them, and I have to say probably the ones that are the most consistent as far as, not a lot of changes from platform to platform as far as going in there and putting on a new ROM are probably the Google phones. A lot of the other brands I've worked with, it's kind of like you know, some of them are easy, some of them are hard, some of them are crazy. It just depends. But I just want you to realize that you go through this, you're going to have some kind of technical background in order to make it happen. And so, that being said, I'm going to get going through there. Now, I did encounter a lot of quirky issues on this one, and I have eliminated them all. And so this is going to seem like it's pretty easy. And in a perfect world, yes. Once you get all your ducks in a row, it's very smooth, and it works quite well. However, sometimes you have to get to that point. And so we're going to do this now and see what's going on, and I'll kind of show you how I do it. And should be, you know, interesting. Let's see what happens. And so in here, I got my platform tools. I have ADB installed, and make sure you guys have the latest Android USB driver. Now, if you're doing this in Linux, you don't need that. But if you're doing it in Windows, make sure you got the latest Android USB driver in, because while we can talk to the phone while it's booted up in the operating system, when we get into the bootloader, we aren't going to be using ADB, we're going to be using Fastboot, and that's going to need the Android USB drivers in order to work. Okay, so let's do this. No devices found. Do we have it connected in? Let's see. Where? Oh, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay. Let's see what happens. Okay, now that we've rebooted into the bootloader, we need to do a couple things. The first thing we need to do is check and see if we're still connected to the Android. And we are. Okay, great. And the next thing we need to do is we need to unlock the bootloader. Okay. Okay. So now, even though it gives us an error there, not a big deal. So we're going to unlock the bootloader. And now we'll see right down where it says device status, it says unlocked. And that's great. That's exactly where we want it. So the device is unlocked, but we want to make sure that we are still connected to it. So Fastboot devices, and we are. So the next thing that we need to do is we are going to have to flash a new recovery ROM over to it. Okay. And I downloaded one earlier, and I'm going to have the links to everything in the description of this video. Okay. So we're going to flash the recovery ROM on the device. We're just going to do Fastboot, and then flash, then boot, and then I think it's boot.image. There we go. Okay. Now that we've done that, we need to reboot into the recovery, and should be able to do that. And there we go. Now we're in the LineageOS. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up side loading this new image to it, okay? And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sending it from the computer to the Android via USB cable. Okay. Okay, so basically what happened was I just went through there, I unlocked the bootloader, and I basically checked that we were still connected to fast boot devices, and then I went and installed the new recovery ROM, installed the new ROM, the OS ROM, and I reboot, and it still has the Google OS on there. So I did a little bit more reading, and here's one of these little quirks. This one requires some extra partitions. So, good times, good times. And so, it looks like we can definitely do that because they created an image that allows us to install that. And so, I just downloaded the extra partitions on there. And we're just going to go ahead and run through this. Good times, good times. Okay, let's see what happens. I've never done this before, so this is a first time for me. And okay, did some extra partitions. Fast boot. Now we're gonna flash the recovery ROM, and it's boot.image. Okay, cool. Now let's go into recovery. Perfect. So first thing we want to do is we're going to factory reset. We're going to format data and wipe. Okay. Go back here. Then we're going to apply updates. We'll do it from A to B. We'll do a side load. Okay. Well, keep in mind, this will give an error around 47%. Not a big deal. It's going to ask whether or not there's like a signature verification. And we're just going to tell it to ignore that error. Okay, there we go. Signature verification failed. Install anyway? Yes. Okay. Now, we should be able to reboot the system now. And, so this is where I realized that perhaps that install didn't take, and I'm not exactly sure why. Because when I installed the stock LineageOS ROM, it worked just fine. And since the MicroG version of LineageOS is obviously built off of LineageOS, I figured, well, it should work. It should install. So right here I'm looking at it, and I mean, they look exactly the same. So it's really hard to say, if it was the MicroG version or the standard LineageOS nightly build. And when I went in here and I looked down at the build, I realized that this was actually not the MicroG version, but it was actually the nightly build that I had installed prior. So right here, I just didn't have the the Android debugging bug set up. So right now, at this point, I wasn't exactly sure how I should proceed forward, and I was doing a factory reset, but I did find a solution to this, and I'm going to show you how I did it here in a second. Okay, so I was able to get, LineageOS installed on there, but it didn't like the one with MicroG. So I did figure out how to get MicroG installed on there, but I had to take a somewhat different approach. So the recovery ROM that LineageOS has, which was the boot.image file, it was not working for me to get installed. It kept hanging up and aborting the install whenever I tried to use the MicroG image, but the MicroG image was built on Lineage. So how I ended up doing that is we'll just reboot to the bootloader and I'll show you. Okay, actually, right here, we're not going to do anything other than this. So what I did was I ended up downloading a different recovery ROM. And this was the one I've almost always used for everything. I just find it more powerful. Here it is. And it's a TWRP. And I've always been a big fan of their recovery ROM. Yeah, I feel like it was built for a power user. I can go in there and actually delete partitions and do just a ton of stuff. And the Lineage recovery ROM, it's just kind of lacking, and it doesn't really have any real tools in it that I feel are useful. It's just basically like very keep it simple, stupid. So here we can wipe and install. So what I did was I just went to install. And then I said install image. And actually, where was it? Maybe it was, it was in advanced. There it is. ADB sideload. I just did it from here. It did throw some errors, but I rebooted and everything was up and it worked just fine. So I was pretty happy with that. So that being said, yeah, good times, good times. And so we just do the ADB sideload from there. And that actually will install it. So, but if you're going to install the standard Lineage OS ROM, it's fine to do it the other way. Okay, now that we're up in MicroG, one of the first things we have to do is we have to configure MicroG. And the first thing we need to do is we need to add an account. Okay. Okay, so we just added an account, a Google account in there. So that's good. So the next thing I want to do on here is we have a few things to install. So I'm going to upgrade a Magisk right there. See if we'll do it. Yeah. Okay. So right now what we're doing is we're just updating Magisk, and that little icon that we clicked on there, that is your Magisk Manager. That's where you go in and you can install modules and all sorts of stuff, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So now that we're in here, let's see what we got. We're going to take a look at Magisk, and okay, requires additional setup. What else do we need to do? Okay, so looks like it's updating the patch, and the way I do it is I do the direct install. Okay, and it's gonna install like this. Then we're gonna reboot the phone, and your root should be updated. Okay. Okay. Double check. Are we good? Okay, great. Looks like everything is up to date. That's awesome. So let's talk about modules. So a long time ago, there used to be this thing called YouTube Advanced. Basically, it was a modified hack version of YouTube. But one of the things was the way you install it is you would go to modules, and then you install it right through here. And when you went out to your main menu, you could, click and drag and uninstall it that way, but it'd still be in the modules. So if you ever install anything through the modules, bear in mind that you must uninstall it out of modules. Okay? You can't uninstall it from the menu here. So what we need to do now, this does have a one package manager right here, and it's all right, but it doesn't have a package repository like, let's say, Google Play. But when we're running MicroG, we don't have Google Play. And so the two that I use are APK Pure and Aptoid. And generally, I use APK Pure. And if I can't find it on there, I can generally find it on Aptoid. And that goes vice versa. And so I should have it in software. Let's see what we got in here. Okay, so let's get APK Pure installed. Okay. And let's get Aptoid installed. Okay. And I'm going to install the Revance Manager, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Basically, we're going to use this to modify YouTube, so you don't have to deal with any of the bloat. And I'll probably do a special video on that just by itself. Okay. So one of the first things I want to do, skip this. We don't want it to manage our phone calls. And I don't really think I want it to do videos. Just want it to install software. Okay. And let's type in Gmail. There we go. And sure, you can send me some notifications. Now, without MicroG, we would not be able to run a lot of the Google code. And an interesting side note is that a lot of the applications that are available are written with a lot of Google's back-end code for their Play Store. And so some apps just won't work unless you have, like Gaps, which is the Google apps on your phone, or MicroG. Okay. Got it. Yep. Take me to Gmail and allow. Got it. Okay. So we are up. This is great. And let's go do something here. So we're gonna, before when I showed you the stuff for MicroG settings, I wanted to install at least one Google app in here so you can see. So you go to MicroG, and the first thing we want to do is I want to turn on this. Okay. Now you can see it gives you a little description down here. I'm not going to bother reading that to you. And the next thing I'm going to do is do the cloud stuff. Okay. And what this is doing is emulating some of the key features that certain applications need to function. Location modules. Okay. So what I do is while using the app, and we're going to allow this back end to work. Okay. Exposure notifications. This is for that COVID stuff, or if you're around a person and they're sick or something, it notifies you. I don't use it. So the next thing I want to do right now is verify that my GPS is working. So I'm going to install Google Maps. So once I get this installed and I open it up and I start running it, I realize it's not connecting to the GPS servers. So one of the things I know that I have to do is go adjust the permissions a little bit to get this to work. Went into apps and I adjusted the permissions because it needed them set. So we did that. And now Maps is working. Now that we got all the functionality working on this phone, I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's been a wild ride, but there's still a few more things that I need to do. But I'm going to put that in a follow-up video where I actually show how I use Revanced with the YouTube apps in order to, make some changes that I feel suit my lifestyle a little better. So if you like the content that I'm putting out and the quality of it, please give me a like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your guys' day.